All right, so, and now we'll be talking more about mobile media tools and apps with Judd Slivka. And one of Judd's, actually besides this specialty in mobile tools and apps and shooting, he has now started taking over and working with the drones at the University of Missouri. So he has another hat that he is doing in his college, but this one is focusing on the mobile tools. So Judd.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. As far as drones, just trying to live up to Matt Waite, who I used to sit next to at a newspaper in Arkansas 20 years ago. We didn't have beards, and we were both, well, I was thinner, Matt was heavier. Matt's weight that he has lost has transferred to me. Anyway, welcome to what works and what doesn't in mobile technology, or no, Chuck, everything's going to be fine, I promise. All right, by the way, does anyone else notice that Charlie Brown's head kind of looks like a butt? Seeing if you're paying attention, it's Saturday, it's Jeans Day. Okay, disappointing moment here, I do not have cool transitions or a lot of animations in here. I do have floors, though, in my, I did bring you hardwood floors. So we're going for an IKEA feel today, right? There's a lot of competition among speakers. So the first thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about something that has absolutely no relation to the rest of the presentation. Then we're going to talk about how to think about mobile tools, and we're going to go from there. If we have time at the end, we'll talk a little bit about apps. I'm going to run through a lot of different apps, a lot of different pieces of hardware. At the end, I will put up a bit.ly that has a link to everything on it. So don't go crazy with, like, was that called Twisted Wave or Twisted Wave? Because, you know, it's an internet company, so it has an idiotic name. So first thing I want to do, though, this has a lot to do with mobile journalism, but it has very little to do with gear, but I'm doing this in service to the profession. And these are the 5 quick tips for mobile journalism. First thing you need to do if you're using your phone, clean your lens, right? There's a lot of crap in your pocket. Also, the glass that they use for the top of the lens on both the newer iPhones and Androids is very sticky, so you get fuzz on it. So fuzzless photos, that's where we want to go. Turn off notifications before you start recording, because notifications will stop whatever recording program is in there. That's right, that text from mom, you've just crashed an interview. Turn on airplane mode unless you're live streaming, because you don't have a bing or a vibrate in the midst of what you're doing. Shoot the aspect ratio and orientation that's appropriate for the channel it's going to. Now, I'm one of those people who used to be like, never, ever, ever shoot vertical video, which is true unless you're shooting for Instagram, in which case you're at a 1:1 ratio, or unless you're shooting for Snapchat, which looks really weird and odd when you try and shoot horizontally. So shoot for where it's going. Just understand where it's going. The other thing is take 3 steps closer to whatever you are shooting, and there's a scientific reason for this. Scientific reason for this is that your eyes see at a focal length of about 50 to 55 millimeters. Looks pretty much like what you see. When you're shooting with a mobile lens, you're at about 21, 22 millimeters, which means that it's going to be very wide. It just tends around the side. If you use digital zoom is like trying to make more soup by adding more water to the soup. It just expands the size of the pixels. And so it's easier to zoom with your feet. Take 3 steps closer. If I took 3 steps closer, I would fall. This would end. We could all go get lunch quicker. You're no doubt rooting for that, but I'm going to stand back here. Now, service to the profession. How many of you, I'd like to ask this, like Matt asked before, how many of you have drones or flown drones? How many of you have cell phones? Right. Do you know, like 8 years ago, if I asked that question, like half of you would be like this, and then my mother would be back going, "What's a cell phone, honey?" That would be my mom. This has changed. Like cell phone penetration is virtually 100% in America-ish. Smartphone penetration not far behind. Where we are in terms of the technology, in terms of processor speed and lenses, kind of varies. It's better among iPhone users, different among Android users because of the different Android systems and the fragmentation in there. But what we're seeing in journalism is that a lot of people are being told, go use your phone to do X story, to build for social media, or to go out and build for a story entirely. There is a Swiss TV station called Les Mont Bleus, which I just like to say, although I'm fairly sure I butchered it, which is doing nothing but iPhone stories. And it has changed the types of stories that they do. There was a Fox station in Charlotte that tried to do that and failed miserably. So we're kind of here and there when it comes to how we actually use the tools of mobile journalism. And there's going to be a lot of people who say, if you have the right tools, you can do anything, and that's not true. So here we are, people are going to try and sell you a bunch of crap. Right, like that. That is actually someone's stabilized selfie rig that they are trying to sell. Right, you want to wear that? That seems uncomfortable, I think, male or female, but more comfortable. I mean, it just seems awful, but look, it's a Steadicam. Yeah, don't do this. Today, I could talk about pieces. And I got an entire bag of bits and bobs in the back that I'll bring out there afterwards, and we can talk about specific pieces. But things change. Just in the last week, a new microphone came out. I want to talk today about how to think about gear. And we're going to talk about building gear, and we're going to talk about modularity and what you need so that you don't go and waste your money or your newsroom's money. Because if it's one thing that reading the news has showed me is that newsrooms don't apparently have enough money. So we don't want to make bad decisions. So here's some of the gear that you can get. That's just like stuff that was in my office. You don't need most of it. There's a guy named Yusuf Omar who now has a company called #YourStories who's going around the world teaching people how to use Snapchat for fun and profit and democracy. But before that, he was the mobile editor at the Hindustan Times, and his job was to take a 750-person reporting staff and turn them into mobile reporters. And so he decided that he was going to become a jeans journalist. He would carry no more gear than he could carry in his pant pocket, or his reporters could carry in his pant pocket, right? Because when you're a 750-person staff, that's a lot of lenses to buy, that's a lot of microphones and things like that. And so what he discovered is that if you're smart about how you do things and apply some techniques and common sense, you don't need most of the gear that goes around it. What you need is defined by your use case. You do not need a $20 app for video if you are shooting stand-ups, right? Politician, legislative sessions, stand-ups. You do not need a depth of field adapter that attaches a 400 2.8 lens to your phone to shoot sports, because it's the wrong thing to do. Also, it makes something that is mobile, your phone, incredibly unmobile by attaching something the size of a cannon to it. So what you need is defined by your use case, and your use case is everything, because your use case allows you to build in a modular sense. Now, use case means how are you going to use it? I'm going to bastardize a bunch of software development here. Your use case is about 90% of what you do, right? That other 10%, that's your edge case, that's your extreme. And so we manage to the use case and we build to the use case. What am I going to do most of the time? I'm going and I work for a university athletic department, and they want me to create social stuff, but they want it to be very human driven. I probably have an edge case use, like maybe once or twice. I might need to get some sort of very wide or action kind of shot. But most of the time, if it's going to be human driven, I'm going to need good interviews, and I'm going to be doing close-ups, right? I'm going to be doing I'm going to be doing busty mediums, right? Or bust-up mediums. I don't need to engineer my gear or to purchase my gear for that extreme case, right? I'm doing mostly interviews with people for radio, but I'm always going to bring it back to a studio where I'm going to edit in Audition or I'm going to edit in Pro Tools. I don't need a $20 multi-track audio editing app. I may be able to get away with the $10 one. I may be able to get away with something that's free. So we're always going to look at our use case, and we're going to consider that use case and not really consider the edge case, because you're not going to use it a lot. Right? Like that represents, I don't know, $1,300 worth of gear right there. And on a daily basis, I use this, maybe I use this, and I use this. I use like $19 worth of gear out of that $1,000. So Let's talk about our use cases. Use cases are how we use it. We basically have 4, and 3 of them are consumption use cases, and 1 of them is not. First thing we have is shaky cam, mobile footage. You know shaky cam made with mobile footage. This is riots. This is protests. These are protests that become riots or riots that are characterized as protests. This is authentic footage, citizen journalism. In situ journalism. We are in the place of where we are. And we tend to get it on phones because phones are very societally accepted. They are very unobtrusive. If you don't believe me, take a DSLR and we'll drive an hour and a half or 3 hours from here, take a DSLR, stand at the entrance to Scott Air Force Base, home of the Joint Intelligence Center, and see how long it takes the air police to come and talk to you. Otherwise, take your phone and stand out there. See how long it takes for the air police to come out there, and there will be a difference in the amount of time. So we have this sort of very common tool, and it allows us to get that in situ coverage. We have gather on mobile and compose it elsewhere. This is what led at one point the BBC to distribute Windows phones to their reporters. What's the advantage of the Windows Phone? The Windows Phone had the best phone camera on it ever. It was like a 20 megapixel phone camera. But they were going to bring it back, and they were going to bring it into Avid Composer, and they were going to build it there. And a lot of times that's what we do. Like Conrad Messner, who does entire documentaries using only mobile phones, will go out and shoot on mobile and then bring it back, and he'll assemble it in Final Cut Pro. Like, this is a very, very usual workflow. And it's probably, for longer pieces, for pieces that aren't destined for social media, this mobile workflow is probably what we see about 80 or 90% of the time. We have mobile all the way. I'm going to gather it, and I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to publish it on mobile. Right? This is the dream of media organizations, a uncentered, no centers of gravity, dispersed organization in which no one talks to each other, but everyone produces content at a very low-cost way. That's mobile all the way. I'm going to edit on my phone. I'm going to shoot on my phone. Maybe I'm going to airdrop it to my iPad, assuming the iPad is still made. Or I'm going to edit it on my phone, and I'm going to self-publish it, right, under the banner of the larger brand. This is what we see with a lot of social media coverage. It's not necessarily something that we see a lot of in terms of like finished broadcast packages. Sometimes we do, most of the time we don't. And then we have value added, and the value added use case is like all the fun, quirky app stuff, which really is about timeline dominance, right? I'm showing the flag, I'm showing the brand in a timeline so that people know that I'm there, that I'm covering the event, that my outlet is embedded in the community or embedded in the event and present, right? And that's that other use case. Now, what you're going to do here is going to really define what you do. For instance, if you're doing gather on mobile, compose it elsewhere, you have a limited budget, you want to spend money on the gathering software, the gathering apps, like higher end video, photography, audio apps, lower end composition apps and editing apps. If you're mobile all the way, you need to invest in both. If you're only doing shaky cam footage, right, you're Night Stalker, you're out there covering, things as they happen, maybe what you need to do is you need to invest in some external lenses and a tripod, but the rest of it doesn't really matter. So it's really where you build and where you spend your money is really going to depend on that use case. We're going to take a minor digression here, which I know is shocking to all of you. But we're going to talk about what mobile does. This is actually, when you see a story in the newspaper, or on TV, this is what the process actually is. We have the gather process, the reporting. We have the assembly process, which is editing, like the physical editing. We have a supervisory process down here, which is the edit process. This is where line producers look at a show. This is where line editors look at something. We have the publishing process. It used to be a legacy newscast. Now it's more the process for social media. And we have this reaction process. How many of you guys saw the movie Spotlight? Like 2 of you in a room of journalists have seen the movie Spotlight? Okay. Boston Globe's investigative team spends months investigating abuse in the church. They publish the story. What's the next scene after they publish the story? 6 in the morning, they're in the Boston Globe's newsroom waiting for the phones to ring. That's the reaction phase. Our reaction phase, unless someone says something uncouth on TV, now happens online. But what we've done is this used to be, at one point, like a 24-hour news cycle, then turned into an 8-hour news cycle. It was like a 4-hour news cycle. Now we're like in a 1.5-minute news cycle. But mobile allows us to compact this down to that 1.5-minute news cycle to change things. But again, that use case is going to define what we do here in this platform. If I don't have to worry about this and this, I can invest my money here, here, and here. If I have an organization that doesn't let me publish directly, I don't have to worry about this because it's going back to the office anyway. And before you think, who wouldn't do that? Let me tell you, I work with a newspaper whose name will remain not named, where they will not let their reporters put things on social media. They will not let them put news content on social media unless it has been seen by a supervisor. Right, so yay, social media. So this takes us here, the idea of don't buy blind. So many times you go into newsrooms and they say, okay, what do we need to get? I say, I don't know. What do you want to do? And they go, but what do we need to get? What you should buy should be determined by which use case you're determining, and you're not going to hit the edge case. And that's just sort of a reiteration. If you're going to buy stuff, make it worth it, make it work. We're not talking necessarily about really big investments. Certainly in the app field, the most expensive media app that you're going to see is maybe $25. But make them worth it. Make them work for you. So your chassis matters, right? Your chassis is your phone or your tablet. And it matters because they have different functions or they have different abilities. So I use the iPhone 7 Plus. It has 2 lenses on it, right? It has a 21 millimeter lens and it has about a 52 millimeter lens on it. Thus, I do not need to get external lenses. If you're shooting with the 7, with the 6, with an Android that has single lenses, you may need to invest in that as a base to get you to where you want to be. If you do have a single lens camera, I would suggest spending $100 on a Moment telephoto lens. Comes with a case. It's a bayonet mount on there. It's the best lens out there, and it's a 2x lens, which means it'll take whatever you're probably 22, 23 millimeter lens. It'll take it up to 44. And then when you do interviews, it will look like you actually have normal people instead of pins that you're interviewing. But it matters. If you have a great microphone, and you won't because it's a phone, then you don't need to spend as much. If you have a phone that has the 3.5 millimeter jack, which means you haven't bought an Apple phone in the last 2 years, you have different hardware options that are available to you easier, more cheaply. So we can start small, we can start very modularly, and I'm going to show some examples of that, and then we can evolve up like, oh, I need this. But don't start out with like the big investment, start out with the small investment, right? One of our unspoken parts of the use case is that mobile journalism can be more economical. But if we start putting a bunch of bits and ends on it, it quickly becomes not only less mobile, but also less economical. So here's a basic audio kit for $80. This uses, plus to your contract on the phone. This uses like a $21 random cheap microphone here. It's made by Audio-Technica. Shure makes like a $50 one. I think it might be a $50. We have an iRig preamp. The iRig preamp is fantastic because it allows you to take any XLR corded microphone, including random cheap microphone, and plug it into your phone. $35 right now. There's another version of it called the iRig Pro, which is about $90, which does some things a little bit differently. This is fine for your basic modular kit here. Using this, and BBC, by the way, bought like 400 of these. Using this, you can plug in a wireless mic. You can plug in a stick mic. Anything that has the XLR cord, can go into your phone. It's an invaluable part of the kit. The app that you see on the screen here is called Voice Record Pro HD. It's free. You can spend $7 and get rid of ads forever. It has visual monitoring on it. You can't listen while you're monitoring, but it's a pretty accurate meter, I found. And on the back end, it's easy to get stuff out of the phone. Has anyone ever tried to move a file off of an Apple phone that Apple decided shouldn't move off there, like a sound file or an MP3 file? It's impossible. Apple does not want you to leave its ecosystem. Thus, we need to have third-party apps that allow you to leave the ecosystem. Voice Record Pro is the basic one. So this is a very, very basic kit. Now, as we move through things, we can mix and match these kits, right? So the next app I show you is going to be a $10 app. You could take that kit, throw this $10 app in, and you have a much more functional kit. So we're going to build modularly. We're going to iterate our kit up. Here's our little more advanced kit. This is using Twisted Wave Editor. It's a single track, very powerful single track audio editor. And I stuck a $90 Shure MV88 condenser mic on there. It goes directly into the lightning port right over here. Works really, really nicely. Has an app that allows me to change around what direction the condenser's in, but also sort of plug and plays very well. $10 here, $90. Find it unless Amazon, B&H have them. Shure made just up the street in Niles, Illinois, by the way, or that's where the company is based. Great if you're doing a press conference, if you're doing straight audio interviews. It feels like to the, sort of when you're doing like a handheld audio interview, it feels to whomever you're interviewing more like an actual interview rather than holding up your phone, and because then we have the tool problem in which you just feel like a tool because you're holding up a phone. Yes?
Is there a headphone input in that?
There is not a headphone input on that. So you can run it through like a Bluetooth headphone, a Bluetooth headpiece. But yes, this is, thank you Apple and our corporate overlords there for taking away that 3.5 millimeter. On the other hand, you have a phone that is a 0.5 millimeter thinner than it was. You needed that space, right? Okay, here is the badass audio kit for $820. We have the Rode IXLR. This is like a stub that fits into the bottom of a microphone. It's about $150. Fits into the bottom of a stick mic, but you can also put it into the end of anything that has an XLR cord. Cord runs directly into the phone through the lightning port. It has an external headphone port, so we can listen. The iRig Pre, by the way, also has an external headphone port. From here, we can plug in anything that's XLR corded. Over here, we have the Rode Reporter mic. That's about $150. If I could marry a microphone, I would. That would be the one. Here, this is a Sennheiser wireless transmitter that would go onto the bottom of this. This would then have a wireless receiver connected to it, wherever in a bag or something. And the app that we're using here is called Ferrite. And Ferrite was designed by journalists. And it is a multi-track audio editor. It's a very powerful multi-track audio editor. You could conceivably replace Audition or Pro Tools with Ferrite if you weren't like doing massive audio mastering. Easy to use, everything slides around. We can sort of swipe down to break things apart. You may not need this, right? If you're just going out and reporting, you're doing audio reporting and then bringing it back and editing it, you don't need Ferrite, right? It's free, and then for $20 you can upgrade to purchase more tracks and to do different audio things, some differences with pan and gain and ducking. But for the most part, we can fade, we can cut, we can move things around, we can layer our audio, and we can mute and solo and do all those basic editing tasks. But you may not need this. This may be too much for you. Let's talk about video for a second. This is the basic video kit. This thing over here is called a I believe it's 7 oak, not 7 oaks, universal phone grip. It is a clamp. It is a clamp that has a 1/4-20 entry here, so you can screw it on top of a tripod. So you can hand carry it, or you can put it on top of a tripod. Also has a spirit level, and it has a cold shoe at the top, so you can mount a light, or you can mount a microphone on it, or you can mount, if you're like me and just have lots of weird stuff and like to create top-heavy things, you can mount a cold shoe of cold shoes on top and then put things on there. All right, that is the cold shoe menorah. The app that we're using here is called Verify. It was created by a company that does verification of citizen journalism in England. And Verify lets you do two very important things. It lets you not spend any money on a video app, and it lets you break what the corporate overlords would like you to do, which is focus and light balance in the same spot, focus and exposure in the same spot. So it gives you these two reticles. One of these reticles allows you to spot expose your light. The other allows you to lock focus. So we can do white balance, individual exposure, and focus lock all on this. Saves directly to the camera roll, which is nice. It's pretty stable. It's a little bit laggy these days since the iOS 11 upgrade. They're working on upgrading it. But it's free. For editing, if you're just doing simple basic editing, there's an app called Filmer, which is not Flimmer. Okay, it was like 11:30 last night. Anyway, you're used to nonlinear editing and timelines. iMovie, Final Cut Pro, Avid. Filmer uses a vertical analogy for editing, and it's moving stuff around. If any of you are familiar with an app called Clips, which was purchased by Google 2 or 3 years ago, and if you go into Google Photos now, it's now their default video editing interface. Filmer basically ripped off the entire analogy. So here's what editing looks like, and this is great if you don't have to do voiceover, and if you're just like cutting sound bites next to each other, next to each other, next to each other, and you want to put something up very quickly. It really is this simple. I apologize for the view into my camera roll you're going to get. So all you do is you tap to sequence where you want things. That's my uncle buying donuts, by the way. Man loves donuts. Now I've just cut. I'm going to move this up. I've changed my sequence. It allows me to change volume. It allows me to trim. Then it allows me to export. It's that easy. It's a vertical analogy. If you don't have to do, and it doesn't allow voiceover right now, and look, we can stop screen recording. So it allows us to save. It allows us to go directly to a lot of different places. Simple to use, free. We can get a little bit more advanced here in the audio kit. We still have that 7 oak universal phone grip right here. Now I've added a smart lav. Right? It's a lav mic that goes directly into the phone. If I'm using an iPhone 7 or above, I need to use the $10 dongle to go in there. But now I can do really good interviews from what is actually the appropriate interview distance. Right? It's not a very long cord. I'm not that far away. But it works nicely with the camera. It creates a nice intensity to it. And it's fantastic, fantastic sound. When you're buying something that goes directly into phone, by the way, you want to look for 3 stripes down here. So it's tip, ring, ring. So you want to see 3 black stripes on it, and then it can go directly into the phone. Now, if you really want to go and cheap out on a lav mic, just use the headphones, the wired headphones that come with your phone, and just tape the 2 earbuds back, and then you can use the microphone on there as a phone. It will go directly in there. Again, using Verify, so here it's enough for me. My use case is that I'm just doing basic video. I need a little bit better interview sound, so I'm going to use that lav mic. Now we can add quality and cost. Shout out to Val Hepner in the back with Movie Pro. I'm putting on a $200 video mic right here. It's the Rode Video Mic Pro. It is great. Still have that same phone grip. I'm now taking advantage of this, of the cold shoe mount up there. And I'm using Movie Pro, which allows multi-track editing. It allows me to do some more manipulation, some more editing. Certainly when I record, it allows me to fine-tune my settings much more than Verify does. It also is a bit faster and less laggy. What I'm doing here is I've decided I need better sound. This guy works to a critical distance of about 3 feet, which means that I can get good interview sound at 3 feet if there's not a whole lot in front of me, and I can get very good natural sound. That's the decision that I made. Now I have the heavy user kit. We have an L bracket here, which is much easier to see when it's not on the screen. But it's basically a metal L with a silicone rubber handle on it, and 2 cold shoes. Up on one of the cold shoes, I have mounted a Sennheiser wireless receiver for a wireless microphone. I can put a light over here. I can put something else over there. Down here, I have what's called a shoulder pad, or shoulder pod, which is a company from Barcelona that makes things like the 7/0 grip. You could actually mount the 7/0 on here if you wanted to. I just happen to use a shoulder pod. It has a screw down top on it so that when you're using this out in the street and someone jostles you, your phone does not go and become an insurance claim. Sometimes I like some fill light in my interviews. Here's like the $16 light. Says Picogen over here. It's actually a company called Tausa, which makes them. I think it's one company in China that makes for about 5 different companies. This clips on there. Has 3 different levels of brightness, and I wouldn't use it for side lighting. I wouldn't use it for key lighting, but it's a nice fill light. So if you're interviewing someone down here, you can get rid of all those overhead shadows that are cast, or those downward shadows that are cast by the overhead lights. Apps, I can use Filmic Pro, $15. It's the heavyweight of video editing apps. It allows me to shoot and log. It allows me to shoot in red. It allows post-processing. It has all of the things that Verify does, most of the things that Movie Pro does. But takes it a little bit further. If I wanted to do a rack focus, so I could do my 1 annual rack focus in a piece a year, right? That's where we start blurry and go sharp. I can do that. It has a slider on there. I can adjust temperature in Kelvin, so it's a very, very advanced app. If I want to go even further than that, I can go spend 20 bucks on Mavis, which has histograms and allows me to get very, very fine tuning in the shooting that I'm doing. Filmic Pro has been crashy for about a couple years. Most people I know have Filmic Pro as a primary and then use Movie Pro as a secondary, as a backup. A lot of people who are doing documentary on phones are using Mavis now. They've moved it over there. It's very sort of high-end. And then the editing is with an app called Luma Fusion, which gives you multiple, like 6, video tracks, multiple audio tracks. It allows you to do color correction. It allows you to do grading. It allows you to do significant audio correction within the app. You can do motion titles. You can do a whole bunch of things. It's more than what we need, but if you're doing mobile all the way, that would be the use case. This, by the way, is what Mavis looks like, just if you wanted. All right, so here we have our green areas telling us what's in focus. There's false color in there. I have every sort of nerdy thing that I could ever want over on the side. It's all manipulatable. And this is this is a shot from Luma Fusion where I have transitions, I have lower thirds, I have audio, multiply, 3 layers of audio right here. Different things going on. I'm fading and I'm ducking my audio down here. I'm doing transitions up here. So very, very complicated. Can it replace Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro? Yeah. I mean, you probably want a bigger screen than your phone. But you can do. So you're missing some of the corrective stuff, and you're missing some of the depth that you would find. Actually, you're missing a lot of the depth that you would find. But if you have to put something together and you want to create like a 3.5-minute enterprise package, and you've done your job on the front end in terms of shooting and gathering audio, this is a place to go. This works. Ultimately, you can mix and match stuff. So here we have that Shure MV88, that shoulder pod clamp. We have that Picogener Tayusa clip-on LED light, and then we have that on the phone. What works for the situation? If I'm in a very dynamic situation, a protest, and I think I'm going to get jostled a lot, I'm probably not going to carry this. I'm probably going to use that L bracket because I can hold on to it a little bit better. If I have to mount multiple things, I'm probably going to use that L bracket because it has a little bit higher, sort of a little lower center of gravity, a little more distributed center of gravity, I think is what I'm saying. If I know that I'm shooting for something where I have to shoot vertically, this is the 7 Oak. It has a 1/4-20 down here. It has a 1/4-20 over here. I can pop that on top of my tripod, and I can shoot in a different orientation as well. So I can begin to mix and match things. That, by the way, is the Reynolds Journalism Institute's Futures Lab. Please come by and visit. This is my kit. This is my personal kit. This is what I shoot with. I shoot with a shotgun mic, this L bracket, a clip-on light, and this is another version of the Rode Smart Lab. This is made by Shure. That's it. That's what I carry. That's in my bag every day. If I need to shoot, I can get exactly what I need. I use Filmic Pro most of the time to shoot video. If I have to edit quickly and I'm just editing for social media, I use Filmer because it's easy. If I have to do more intense sort of editing, I go and I use, just blanked out, Luma Fusion. Luma, by the way, the company, also has 3 different apps that are very, very cheap that sort of blow apart Luma Fusion. There's Luma Clip, which allows you to speed ramp, meaning change the speed of your clips, change aspects, do some basic cutting. Then there's Luma Effects, which allows you to do coloring and filtering. And they're much less expensive than the whole package. They're really designed for individual clip work rather than timeline work, but I do like those. Some apps which we'll see. This is up on the web, and I'll take some questions here because that's much more fun than me talking. Each of these you can tap on them and you can get direct buy links. I make absolutely no money from those, by the way, so this is not an affiliate thing, it's just where I found prices. Here's where you can find those, bit.ly/Judd'sApps 2017. If you have any questions, easiest way to find me is on Twitter at Judd Slivka, because I'm sneaky. What questions do y'all have?
I'm super curious with that clip-on light. Like, I mean, I'm guessing, is that light pretty diffused then? Like, so it's not jarring? Oh, sorry.
So the question was, is that light diffused so it's not jarring? Yeah, it has a fairly heavy iced lens over it, but up on that 3rd level, you could use it to interrogate people. Yeah, but again, as a fill light, it works really nicely. If you're going to do like a soft side light, you could probably do that on the 3rd setting. And if you want, I have it in my bag. You can take a look after this. What else can I answer? Yes?
Can you repeat, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the name of the Swiss place station that you think is doing a good job with it? And it kind of explained to us why the Fox channel failed. I'm unclear about that.
I'd like to think that you're asking me to explain the Swiss thing again just because my français is so bon, right? But no, it is Le Mans Bleu, or Lemanbleu. They changed their approach to shooting to reflect the iPhone, or their platform, the chassis, right? So a lot of panoramic wides, a lot of tights for interviews, avoiding visual storytelling that doesn't suit itself to mobile reporting. Low light, high speed, dark rooms, and trying to show, like if you want an exercise in frustration, go and shoot a soccer game. with an iPhone, and it just doesn't work. It's like little pins running back and forth. The Fox experiment didn't work because they went too far. They said, this is how we're going to do it. And there are things that you need a shoulder cam for, or a DSLR, right? I mean, I wouldn't even, like shooting sports, I wouldn't use a DSLR to shoot live video for sports. I would use, Panasonic on my shoulder. And I think that there's a tendency to think of technology solutions. And this is not just restricted to mobile, and I think we see it with drones, and I think we saw it with front-end, back-end combined typesetting systems 25 years ago. There is a tendency to think in technological terms that this is a magic bullet and this can address everything that we have. Every problem that we have can be addressed by this technology, and I think that was the Fox assumption. Fox was also that station was also trying to do it on the cheap, so they hired like people right out of college with iPhones. But there's a blended solution. This becomes a story or a part of a way to tell a story, and not the only way to tell that story. And I think that's where they failed. Now, what we're seeing is social media posts, and there's plenty of TV stations and plenty of newspapers that are now mandating that their reporters do social media posts. Social media posts are happening almost entirely, and social media video, are happening almost entirely from phones. And so we're trying to figure out, like, okay, we know the use case, what's the best way to apply our technology into that use case? And I think we're still trying to figure that out. But no one is standing up and cutting social media from an MMJ kit, a backpack journalism kit at this point, because it's just easier to do it from the phone. Okay.
Thank you, Judd. I appreciate the advice and the help.
Thank you.